Hi, everyone. Welcome to the plenary session at the AAS Science, Technology, and Human Rights Conference. My name is Chisato Calvert, Interim Director of OpenAQ. We're a nonprofit organization that connects communities with open air quality data to fight air inequality across the globe. I hope you all can see my screen. I'm joined here today by OpenAQ community ambassadors Farah Kazi, who is based in Mumbai, Ray Kosi, who is based in Tirana, Albania, Malusi Molofe, who is based in Durban, South Africa, and Azjargo Tsogtsehan, who works in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. Before I move into the panel discussion, I'd love to take a few minutes to provide a global snapshot of air pollution. Air pollution affects 1 in 8 people. 1 in 8 people die from air pollution every year. This means 6.6 million deaths annually, and this is a statistic from 2019. Over 90% of the world's population lives in areas where the PM 2.5 levels are above the WHO guideline for healthy air. And this statistic has changed from 10 micrograms per cubic meter down to 5 micrograms per cubic meter in the recent report that came out from World Health Organization. This map shows the annual concentration of PM 2.5 across the globe. And PM 2.5 is a fine particulate matter that has the most hazardous effects on the human body. And as you'll see, the dark red countries in the regions have the highest concentrations of PM 2.5, which makes these countries the most polluted in the world. And when we're thinking about air pollution, we really need to think about air inequality or the disproportionate burdens of air pollution exposure. Air pollution exposure is not distributed evenly, and there are disparities across geographies, socioeconomic factors, race, among others. And so it's important to think about air pollution not as a simple cause and effect, but rather a systemic issue that's rooted in policies and regulations and large-scale decision-making that are structurally placing some people as the most vulnerable to air pollution compared to others. The panelists today will be providing a deeper look into the different human rights issues related to air pollution, but I did want to share this recent development. This is a press release that came out on October 14th, where the UN Human Rights Commission, Human Rights Council, this recognition to really push air pollution as a hindrance on human rights. And so by recognizing for the first time that having a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a human right really helps to frame air pollution not as an issue that needs to be tackled by scientists or solely by policymakers, but really making the global governance system accountable for fighting air pollution on a global scale. And when we're thinking about human rights, an important thing is also the right to air quality data and the right to information about the air that we're breathing. And according to a 2020 State of Global Play report that we published last year, only half of the world's governments actually produce any kind of air quality data. So what this means is that 1.4 billion people across the globe do not have any information about the air that they're breathing or that they're exposed to on a daily basis. So what we're trying to tackle from an air quality data perspective at OpenAQ is to aggregate all of the data that's being collected by governments and private sector companies around the globe and make it available open source, free to use for the public in a one-stop platform so that you can actually access and download this data. And so as of this month, we've collected over 10 billion data points from across the globe, across 396 sources. A source would, for example, be the US EPA, and from over 133 countries across the globe. And we also believe that open data in and of itself is not sufficient to fight air pollution. So we need to really commit to the air quality advocates around the globe who are using this open air quality data and really translating the data into impactful messages as well as um, actionable initiatives to really fight air pollution on the ground. And so I'm very excited now to introduce the 2021 Ambassador Cohort who has joined us today as the panel. I will stop sharing my screen for a moment so I can actually see everyone's faces. Great. So yeah, I would love to kick off the introductions. Malusi, would you be open to sort of sharing your name, your role, the institution that you're with, and also share how air pollution is infringing on the human rights in your community? What are some of the challenges? What is the political context under which the air pollution challenges are taking place in your community? Sorry, we're not able to hear you, Malusi. Ray, do you think that you'd be able to kick off the introductions?
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, perfect. So this is Ray from Albania. I'm currently representing Sindra Mardana, which means relationship center in Tirana. We're based in the capital. Our main work focuses on urban planning and maybe at the neighborhood level at this moment, trying to make the city better for children in general. And we try to include an approach to air quality as in terms of offering better air quality for children in the future, but also access to data and also making air quality better by different urban practices or urban interventions with the cities here. At the moment, Romania faces an issue of having let's say, an intermediate level of air pollution, but we have 20 days of green level air quality. And the main issue that we're facing is actually lack of transparency for air quality data. So when you try to, if you're a professional working in the area or even a representative of institutions, data is super scattered. There's no one one institution that's responsible for producing data or even gathering that. So there are several scattered around air monitors, be that in the main municipalities or even by some NGOs that are working currently in air quality specifically, but also for, let's say, in the environmental milieu. So if you want to take action, that's also very hard to do because we don't have access to reliable data, and we also are very kind of confused of where institutionally wise, where do you have to go to again to be able to solve a problem, let's say. So I was also trying to we prepared at the beginning of this fellowship a landscape assessment of the situation in each country. So in Albania, we have the latest report that's been done on the status of the environment, and that includes air quality, is 2019. So that's like 2 years ago, and there's not still an update, not on the past year. So the main issue I would say is gathering data, which would then be reflecting on the status and on the main contributors to the actual air quality situation that we have at the moment. And our main contributors remain transport and also the building industry in the city. So there are many steps being taken by the authorities, such as strategic plans. So at the let's say on the preparing frameworks or even some regulations at the local level. At least we're doing pretty okay, but still we find a hard time to find, let's say, specific steps taken towards that. No information on air monitors, monitoring stations, data available, next steps, where actual data that we find in some reports comes from, etc. So there's a lot of confusion, and that makes hard also for independent actors such as ourselves to take steps towards solving the situation.
Great. Thank you so much, Ray. Azza, would you like to do a quick intro?
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, great. Hello, my name is Azza Tsahang, and I'm from Mongolia. And I'm the founder of a nonprofit that's called Breathe Mongolia Clean Air Coalition. And our mission is to arm people with the resources to end air pollution in our country. What we do is we educate the public and build capacity. And also we monitor and do watchdog activities to monitor the implementation of different policies, to make sure promises are made and also fulfilled. And then we also strive to improve the collaboration among different stakeholders. So what's happening in Mongolia right now is that in 2019, we ranked number 4. And actually in 2019, we ranked number 3. And in 2020, we ranked number 4 as the most polluted country in the world, according to IQ Air, right next to India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, countries with billions and millions of people. And our population is only 3.4 million people. So it's as you know, air pollution is a symptom of a larger developmental challenge. And it's because of insufficient energy infrastructure, poor urban planning, lack of employment opportunities outside of urban centers. Because right now, half of the country lives in the capital city, and the capital city land is like only 0.3% of the entire land. Our country is quite big. It's the 19th largest country in the world, but half the population lives in one city. So it's quite ridiculous that we're trapped in this valley with winter inversion and still burning coal in our homes, and driving vehicles that like 80% of them are older than 10 years old. And then this unstructured, very unorganized construction going on. So we are, as a result, we can be one of the most polluted cities in the world, especially the capital city. And then we have the world's 10% of the world's coal reserve, and we're not willing to let go of it. And yearly household usage of coal hits 1 million tons. And on the coldest days, daily average of PM 2.5 can reach around 687 micrograms per cubic meter. So breathing such toxic air violates the constitutional human rights of every citizen and makes Mongolia a country with a high risk of cardiovascular and respiratory disease. Obviously, the causes of our disease of our population is we rank number 1 in the world by stroke and heart disease. And then our lung cancer increased like over 50% over the last decade. And then we haven't solved this problem because of lack of awareness education among the public and the decision makers. And also where our stakeholders are working in silos. There is not enough information exchange. People are repeating each other's mistakes. There's not enough congruency among the different policies that are being produced and implemented, and poor budget allocation. We've made some progress for the last several years in raising awareness about this issue, and then allocating funds. But it's the progress we've made, I would say, is definitely insufficient. The Constitution of Mongolia recognizes our right to a healthy and safe environment and to be protected against environmental pollution, ecological imbalance. And we joined the Kyoto Protocol, embraced all the SDGs, and signed the Paris Agreement. We've done everything on paperwork, but yet we continue to rank at the top of the most polluted countries in the world. And children are dying every year. Miscarriages like 3.6 times higher in the winter polluted season. So it's an ongoing issue that we urgently have to tackle, that we have to allocate our resources and human resources and build capacity as soon as possible. It's the number one priority health crisis in our country. But fortunately, our politicians are way more open about it, way more transparent about what they're doing, and they're less in denial these days. So I think we made a progress, but we still have a long way to go.
Thank you so much, Azza. Farah?
Hi, can you guys hear me? Hello?
We can hear you, Farah.
Yeah, okay. Hi, I am Farah Kazi. I'm the campaigns at Vatavaran Foundation. Vatavaran is an environmental NGO based in Mumbai, India, and it was co-founded in December 2018 by Mr. Bhagwan Kesbat, who is a social entrepreneur with over 17 years of experience in the social sector. Mrs. Sunita Nimbalkar Kesbat, who's the chief editor of a weekly region at Center on Energy and Clean Air. Our work extends in three key areas: biodiversity, forests, and clean air. And we rigorously follow the RCP approach. This is something that we have found seems to work across all sectors and all of our projects. RCP approach is the research, campaign, and policy advocacy approach. Whether it's citizen-led research by some big organizations, they need to be complemented with campaigns and policy advocacy. And that is exactly what we're doing at Vatavaran. My specific role, it is kind of safe to say that my expertise is in my interest in this subject stems from when I began working at one of India's biggest data journalism organization, where I spent a significant part of time analyzing and visualizing air quality data. And one question that always stuck with me was next. We understand this data, but what next? And it is with that intention that I moved towards the social sector, and I began my journey in Vatavaran as lead of campaigns, and currently I'm leader. I spearhead the campaigns. We analyze data, we identify trends or emerging patterns, and we try to bridge that gap exists currently between the data that or the research which is there and the way it needs to be communicated or to the general public or the common man. We initiate public dialogues through various interventions, through multi-stakeholder meetings, and we have now begun working closely with the government, which is the government of Maharashtra at the state level. The air pollution problem is very crucial or critical. Very astonishing that life begins with a simple breath, and yet that's how much attention we actually pay to the quality of the air that we breathe. In India, a lot of the air pollution for a relatively long period of time, the problem was focused only towards the Delhi capital, national capital region, and to the winters. That is why in 2019, when we began this journey for clean air in Maharashtra, we started with the intention because we were aware that air quality is not just a problem which is specific to a certain within a certain period of a year. It's there throughout. Yes, winters do exacerbate the air pollution problem, but yes, air pollution exists throughout, and trying to these gaps communicate exist. Currently, there are stakeholders, but there's a communication, and we try to facilitate and bridge those gaps, bring everything together.
Great. Thank you so much for the introductions and for sharing a little bit about your work and also the context under which these air quality challenges are taking place. I hope that Malusi can rejoin us, but for now, I'm going to transition into the next panel questions. Farah, I'm wondering if you could actually kick off this next question. How have governments, local, regional, multi-regional, responded to the air pollution crisis in your community? What kind of investments have been made? Who are the main players? And what are some of the current gaps that exist?
Problem that actually began way back in 2000 eternity, I guess, but it was highlighted during the year 2000. Pollution became so severe that schools closed down, offices were closed, for a complete lockdown, even though there was no lockdown at that point of time. That was how severe the situation had become, and started putting together committees, and the central government was very deeply involved along with all of the NCAP, National Clean at level. We have a central pollution control board which works at the central level to monitor the air quality, and then at the state level there are several other pollution control boards who keep on reporting back to CPCB. Now since 2015 and now, one big step that has happened with these monitoring agencies is that CPCB has set up a portal which is called as the Prana portal. Prana in English means breath, okay? And they have put up this portal together with the intention of increasing transparency and have more accountability even from state pollution control boards when they are reporting back to the CPCB. So everything which begins right from the setting of clean air action plans to the budgeting to the implementation, they've put everything in one portal. Even though it is in a very nascent stage, I think if it is worked upon, and this is exactly what we were trying to achieve when when the entire clean air community in India began, is to increase transparency and accountability. So if the funds have moved, why is the work not done, etc. Or when it comes to pollution and monitoring, I think we've made huge bounds and leaps. Yeah, quite ahead. I would though say that we are a developing nation, and we need to keep that in mind, that we may not be able to have as many reference grade monitors as we may scientifically. So we must make use of a combination of data sets, which include satellite data, reference grade data, low cost sensor data, as well as the manual monitoring, which currently the government does. At the state level, I think we have a very young and dynamic environment minister, Aditya Thackeray, who last year publicly acknowledged that climate change is real, it's at our doorstep, and we need to act now. And he is, I think, taking some really great steps ahead this year, the Maharashtra government has launched the EV policy, where they are looking at transitioning to clean energy. There are also several plans which are in progress at the moment, which have not been released, to incorporate renew into the entire sector, because currently a lot, almost all of the energy the entire population of India is getting is from the coal emissions. So we are trying to not only move towards clean mobility, but also towards cleaner energy. And we're trying to push for it as much as we can. So these are some of the players who are involved, and the work that is being done at the city level. The ULBs, the urban local bodies which are responsible for this, have set out city level clean air action plans. And as a community, I think while the level of awareness is not as much as we like, okay, I think the community can serve as a watchdog, to increase the accountability which happens from these government agencies. So yes, that's how I would put in a bit. Would you like me to go in a little bit more detail? Is it okay about a
No,
little bit of which is this?
yeah, thank you so much for sharing at the different levels of government how they're regulating and what kinds of policies are in place and how they're implementing it. It's really helpful to understand how they intersect as well. So really appreciate the overview that you shared with us. Ray, would you be able to share a little bit of context around this in the context of Albania?
Yes, actually, and it's really
Oh, sorry to interrupt. One quick note. Do you think you could turn your volume up
I
in
think
speaking?
I need to raise my voice. Do you hear me better now?
Yeah, it's a little bit better. Yeah.
It's I think it's my laptop microphone isn't the best. So actually, we're lucky because in the field that we're working in, there are many actions being taken, let's say, to tackle air quality. So the city of Tirana has taken, let's say, the lead in order to improve air quality, or set up strategies and set of steps in order to improve air quality in the city. So Tirana, the capital, has up to 1 million inhabitants, and it's our formal population right now is 2.1, so it's 50% of Albanians live all in the city, and there's a lot of urban sprawl happening. And as I mentioned earlier, the main sources of pollution are transport and building construction industry. So the city of Tirana has prepared a green action plan as of 2018, and they are preparing a sustainable urban mobility plan as well, which will supposedly tackle the issue of public transport being the main source of pollution, but at the same time, I mean, not the main source, but being a big polluter. Let's say that the situation of public transport is not that good. So people turn to their private vehicles, which in turn become the main source of pollution. So the SUMP, which is the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, plans to tackle these issues and improve the city in terms of promoting walkability, use of bicycles, improving infrastructure, so that they will enable people to use alternative methods of transport. So I can say that at the moment, the government, the local government, is trying to change the behavior of people in order to not produce more pollution. And they're focusing on this. So as I mentioned earlier, data is not available or even transparent. I have had the chance to speak to many institutional representatives, be that from the government or the Ministry of Environment or even the municipality, and they all, let's say, don't have a usual exchange and don't have a clear source of data that they can formalize or that can be, let's say, recognized also by other entities. The latest report that the World Bank has, or even the World Health Organization, with reliable numbers from Albania is 2018, I think. So that shows a lot from the current picture. And as I mentioned, they are setting up a set of strategies that include new urban practices, behavioral changes for the people in the city, or even updating technology, or even fleets of transport for public transport systems. And at least that's if the smaller agencies or the operational agencies of the city keep up with the strategic goals, and also with the transparency. So yearly measurement of reaching these goals, then I think we'll have a good chance of achieving some small changes that will then result in our achieving of the goals of also the SDGs, because Albania is really focused and has a large presence of the UN in town. And we are really framing these strategies also under the SDG goal achievement, let's say, objectives. So being an urban planner as well, I have a lot of, let's say, trust that if these steps are truly taken and there is and commitment to reaching these goals, then we might have a real change in this upcoming 5 years in air quality.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, Ray. Malusi, glad to see you on the screen. I'm wondering, actually, since everyone hasn't met you yet, could you actually share a little bit about your background, your role in the city of Durban, and also the question that we're trying to answer now is how governments have been responding at the local and regional levels, and what kind of investments have been made on air quality initiatives. So if you don't mind sort of packaging, all of those responses in your response now, that would be fantastic. Thanks, Malusi.
Great. As I was saying previously, good morning if it's morning, good day if it's day, and good afternoon if it's in the afternoon. My name is Malusi Molefe. I'm currently Durban's acting air quality officer, and I'm basically at local government level dealing with air pollution. I've had about almost 12 years experience in this game. So, yeah, just to talk about the Durban scenario, we have what we call the South Durban health study that was done in early 2000s, which showed the inequalities in air pollution, especially for Durban. They found that 50%, there was a 50% higher prevalence of asthma in the south of Durban as compared to the north. The south of Durban is very industrialized, consists of 2 refineries, 2 sugar mills, paper mills, and a plethora of industries that eventually led to a very dire air pollution situation. During that time, they mostly dealt with sulfur dioxide, but as things progressed and where we are now, we're still having a particulate matter and a NOx and benzene issues and other pollutants such as ozone as the pollution travels out. So that's basically the Durban context. There's huge disparities and inequalities in terms of air pollution. You'd find that in most of these industrial areas located close to them are the more lesser socioeconomic affluent communities, which tend to also not have clean energy, which also tend to have don't have some other services such as waste collection, and you'd find that they end up burning waste. So you'd end up having a situation where there's a lot of air pollution sources, indoor, outdoor, as well as major sources such as industry, as well as traffic congestions as people are trying to get to workplaces and things like that. So that's basically the Durban context and myself. And then in terms of government's response, um, okay, there was legislation developed also in the early 2000s, which is about 2004 or 5, where they developed the Air Quality Act. And the Air Quality Act, later on, they started setting standards. Basically, the Air Quality Act worked so as to establish how air quality will be managed in the country. And then after that, they started releasing various legislation that dealt with specific matters, be it dust, be it large industry, be it odors, be it whatever pollution sources. So basically, government there dealt with what's called standard setting through legislation to say if you are operating this industry, this is the allowed emission you're supposed to have, and things like that. So basically, as the air quality officer, you're responsible for partially that, which is to regulate these industries, issue them with atmospheric emission licenses, and then monitor them, basically evaluate emission reports for them, determine what air quality improvement measures are required from them, and then monitor those. And also compliance and monitoring and enforcement where there's non-compliance. We also do, as well as from government, there is awareness raising. When this air quality function was initially sitting at national, where you have one national air quality officer, but obviously he couldn't be everywhere. South Africa is not that small, so with the new legislation, they sort of devolved it. It then moved to local governments as well as provincial governments. So you have each and every district would have its own air quality officer who's required to license these industries. And even in the new constitution, they actually devolved, whichever is the right word to use, air pollution to mostly being the responsibility of local government, having it as their own mandate, and having powers to do whatever they need to do in terms of air pollution. So national government mostly did what is called the standard setting and also capacitating local government in terms of what's required of them, the skills that they need to have, and things like that. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. And we always have quarterly with our regional, provincial government, and then annual. There's also quarterly meetings as well with the national government where we discuss progress and also share ideas in terms of what's happening currently. So that's it, really. I hope I've covered everything.
Thanks so much, Malusi. Azak, could you share how the Mongolian government, you've kind of alluded to this in your introduction, but would love to hear any other updates on any initiatives that the government has been taking on in Mongolia.
Sure. We cannot, eradicate air pollution without the collaboration and cooperation and the leadership of the Mongolian government. So over the last few decades, we've, as I've said before, we've produced quite a bit of paperwork. We passed the law on air in 1995, and then the Green Development Policy, Sustainable Development Vision documents, and also recently in 2017, we created this national pollution reduction action plan. And we have many stakeholders involved in the implementation of these policies and regulations and programs. We have the different ministries, the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Environment, the heavy industry, the construction, the transport and development, and the capital city, UB city municipality. And they have their own department to reduce air pollution as well. And then we have different institutions, the National Center for Occupational Safety or the National Center for Public Health and all that. And then international organizations, international developmental organizations such as EBRD, Asian Development Bank, Asian or World Bank or UNICEF, they all play a crucial role in fighting air pollution. Or international organization called JICA, they've done quite a bit of research and they've invested quite a bit through loans and grants, and also the role that nonprofits and non-governmental and civil society organizations obviously play a big role, such as ours, Breathe Mongolia, or GEARS, GGGI, or People in Need. And then foreign embassies in Mongolia also invest quite a bit in air pollution reduction programs, and they give out grants to different projects as well. So everyone is working together from different angles. So far, we've spent $193 million, which is equivalent to 550 billion local currency on air pollution reduction efforts. And for example, World Bank introduced these low emission stoves. We call it the improved stoves, almost 10 years ago, and it fizzled out in 2015. We did see reduction, but we didn't continue its usage. We didn't spread its usage all across the country. So that's one example of not monitoring the data, not communicating it, not being consistent with a program to see, to continue to reduce the pollution. And people think it was not a good project, but it was if you actually see the data. And then recently in 2019, our government decided to ban the use of raw coal in the capital city where half of the country lives. So that reduced, there's a study that says that reduced particulate matter levels, but there hasn't been a lot of verifying or validating study on it. And but on the other side, sulfur dioxide emissions increased. So we've made a little bit of progress. There were around 58 different activities that were done. We gave out, air purifiers in kindergartens and schools, but because of lack of monitoring, sometimes they would end up in school or kindergarten principal's home, or they wouldn't, change the filters on time and things like that. There have been quite a bit of interventions to also to limit migration to the capital city, or reduce the heat loss of different private housing, housing like apartments or traditional GEARS, or improve the insulation. And also private sectors also started playing role, thanks to Mongolian Green Financial Institution Association, in collaboration with UNICEF and an organization called TOS, Sustainable Financial Association. They created this package product where people can get green loans, very low interest, or sometimes no down payment and things like that. And people can switch to electric heaters from coal burning stoves. And then they also get an affordable package to insulate their home to minimize heat loss. So, and then just recently, like last week or something, I think they're certified retrofitting a house that meets the standard of energy efficiency, so that people, first of all, that would have people not use coal burning stove, and then when they use electric heater, because the insulation and the energy efficiency is so good, the electricity bill would be very low, so around $10 a month. That would be the electricity bill. So we are making progress when we work together. And But we still have a long way to go when it comes to, creating green spaces around the cities, or, renovating the transportation system. Right now, we have one bus, for example, in the capital city, one bus per 1,500 people. So that's the accessibility of our public transportation. So we have a long way to go. I would say that I think where we can do better is that we've, I think our other panelists also mentioned that just briefly, is that a lot of the countries, they focus on the capital city, the biggest city with the highest pollution. And then we seem to ignore smaller cities or provinces, but the pollution problem in our country is like nationwide. Everyone is burning coal. Everyone is driving, old cars. Everywhere the infrastructure is not, properly organized or well developed. So we are making progress in the capital city, but outside the capital city, we're still burning raw coal. And as long as we keep burning coal, we're not going to get rid of this problem at all. So I think where the provincial, regional government, I think they could be doing better in terms of communicating the health impacts of air pollution and being more proactive and robust in fighting air pollution in our own cities. Like, for example, my city where I was born, it's a mining town, and the pollution, we don't have, proper government stations that shows or that monitors or that communicates all the different pollutants. So we really don't know how bad it is. But some other provinces, they installed, like Bayan, right, with the help of UNICEF, they installed like reference grade monitors, and it can be worse than the capital city. And they started collecting data, and they started retrofitting different housing to make the houses more energy efficient and to help people, get rid of their coal burning stoves. Or in the South Gobi, where we have the big mine as well, they have been investing quite a bit in renewable energy. So there are some provinces that are being exemplary, and the other provinces, they should follow the lead and invest in their infrastructure and their energy, clean energy, and oppose the spread of coal refineries all around the world, because it's a very short-term solution. It's not the ultimate solution for us.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives, everyone. I think that your comment, Azah, about the emissions and thinking about longer term solutions is really important. I think from the air quality, the global air quality funding landscape, there's less than 1% of global philanthropy that actually goes toward funding air quality initiatives. Whereas there's a lot more investment on climate change and climate-focused initiatives. So I think there's a huge barrier and gap, both in terms of investments and also in terms of, the investments essentially also kind of affect the way initiatives are shaped. And so I understand that even from US-focused initiatives, it's really difficult to tailor initiatives to really focus on air quality or air pollution. So there needs to be more explicit addressing of air pollution and public health effects of air pollution with the climate dialogue and climate action. There isn't enough of that intersection. And I think by actually having that intersection more mindfully and meaningfully integrated, we could think more broader about the longer term solution building processes, like tackling the coal industry and ensuring that that could actually have those direct impacts in public health. So thank you so much for sharing all of your perspectives and the importance of not only the coordination between the different stakeholders, but also identifying some of the gaps and the importance of being able to really work collectively and collaboratively on solving the air pollution problem. Ray, I'm wondering if we can start with you for this next question, because I know that there really is a lack of investment in air quality data. I guess what do you see as the role or potential role of open air quality data in shaping air quality as a human rights issue? What are some of the challenges and opportunities that you see in harnessing data to raise awareness and to push for change on the ground?
I see the issue of, let's say, equality in air quality data access as an issue of human rights because it's about access as always. So if families in Albania would have the opportunity to access air quality data, they could have the chance to, let's say, decide where to live, I mean, upon their abilities, or where to take a kid to school, or where to settle, or what trip to take after work with their children. So, as any issue that regards services that are available to families, it's about equality and equity as well. So, access to transparent but also reliable air quality data would also especially help other actors or stakeholders to be able to take more specific steps towards helping the citizens in the country. Let's say if the role of citizens in asking for change would be also stronger and more empowered if they had access to better data in order to back up their requests, or even drive a change that is driven by bigger numbers and is backed up by numbers at the same time. What I see as an opportunity, and I think I've had the chance to talk about this even in an earlier session, is sharing or even raising awareness of how air quality affects health. And I don't mean generally the general knowledge of that even children have, that air quality affects our lungs, but also how it affects the most common diseases. And diseases in Albania, such as diabetes or heart diseases, heart failures, are increasing. And I think there is a statistic of 2019 that up to 2,000 and 100 and something people died from air quality that year in Albania. So I believe that using these numbers, which are very specific, would have a bigger impact on the community here. So they would be able to demand for more change. And by that, I mean change that is, let's say, easy to achieve. Green space available per person, be that through small community or neighborhood level interventions, like opening schoolyards to the public for after hour public space, let's say, enjoyment. Or even other neighborhood scale, local scale, city, or even national policies and acts that the government should take. So it is a human rights issue, of course, because access to data that affects your life, of course, is a human rights issue. So you can make your choices, informed choices on how you live your life, but also to be able to demand and even enforce change at the political level. So this is it on my side.
Thank you so much, Ray. Malusi?
Okay, so you were asking about the role of OpenAQ.
The role of open air quality data more broadly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's something I actually didn't touch on much in terms of monitoring in our country and government's involvement in that. So, as part of legislation that was passed, it required that there be ambient monitoring from either provincial and, of course, local government. So a lot of monitoring stations were rolled out until eventually, lately, we now have what is called national air quality indicator stations, which are supposed to represent particular areas in terms of their air pollution. So there, from then they were able to have this website called the South African Air Quality Information System, where all ambient air quality data is basically available, and you can see air quality real time in the country. I think this has enabled the country and even the residents to be able to see where disparities are in terms of air pollution. We when you whenever you get into the app, you can actually see Johannesburg and those areas. You would see a 10, with the purple color, which means hazardous air, and you would look at your area and you'd see green. So we've been able to notice that definitely some areas are much more polluted than others. So we've been able to see the disparities in air pollution where immediate and action is actually required. Some of those areas have been declared as priority areas in terms of air pollution, and we now understand why. We can actually see whenever we enter the app to say it's really polluted. And we with open air quality, you are able to set realistic targets as well by seeing areas that have improved over time, and seeing how they improved. You are able to now put yourself on a pathway to get there, to say this has been achieved by XY, and we can look at an example of how they did it, and we ourselves can put ourselves on a path to meeting that. So it's really examples of pathways to achieve, and really to look at the benefits of you could get from improved air quality. You can then move on to seeing the health effects of that area and comparing it to yours, and you can be able to tell, that based on the air quality, this is why we have this and they have that. So it's to see disparities, to determine realistic targets, and to determine pathways of achieving good air quality. You have to see the example that it can be done, and you can then think to yourself that you also can achieve it. So yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Malusi. Azar?
Hi. So obviously, having access to air quality data is our right. It's a right to know, right? Because we breathe such toxic air majority of the time, and it's a right to know how bad it is outside and inside. Because our population is so young. Half our people are under 25. One third is children, and only 3 to 4% of our population is above 65 years old. So our parents don't live long at all. They retire and they die from some kind of cancer or some kind of chronic disease. So 1 in 10 people in our country die because of air pollution. So it's quite tragic. And especially these days, because our COVID cases are quite high, combination of toxic air pollution that's starting now, that the cold season is starting, and COVID infection is obviously quite dangerous, and what do you call? It's deadly. So just a few months ago, number of children, percentage of children who were hospitalized were like 5-6%. Now it's 17% of all the children with COVID are being hospitalized. And pneumonia is number 2 killer of children under 5 in our country. So knowing how bad the air quality is and taking appropriate action on national level, and also individual civilian level is crucial. There are lots of things that need to improve in our country. As I said before, air quality monitoring network needs to expand. outside of the capital city. Right now, majority of the stations are concentrated in the capital city, and we started, when we collaborate with other nonprofits, we asked them to distribute the low-cost sensors in the countryside so that even citizens in the countryside know how bad the air is and what they need to do when the air quality is bad. And then we should also communicate not only, just the air quality index, but actually the physical data. Right now, the government stations, they only communicate the air quality index, and the formula has changed lately. So we really don't know, what the actual level of pollution is if we look at the government data. So that needs to be more transparent. And then we need to monitor at least the particulate matters more so, because right now, if we check the air quality in one of the provinces, it says the air quality is great because it's only measuring ozone. We don't know how bad the particulate matter is. So that needs to improve as well. And then the way that the air quality is communicated to the public needs to improve, because we only say that, oh, the air quality is bad. It's, it's polluted, or it's extremely polluted. But in other countries or US, it says unhealthy, hazardous. So that needs to change as well, because those numbers and purple and red colors don't really mean anything to the public unless we communicate its health impact, and not just say like, oh, pregnant women or people with high blood pressure at risk, but we need to educate people that it affects children's development, the brain development, it affects fertility, it can cause stroke. Our people think that air pollution has to do with only respiratory diseases or bronchitis or pneumonia. But as we know, it affects the entire body system. So that education and communication is lacking. One of the TV stations, Bloomberg TV, was reporting the air quality on TV, like the weather, but because they report low-cost sensor data, the government wasn't too happy about it. So a lot more TV channels and just the communications channels need to be diverse, like on radio. Some news stations, they have their quality little tabs on their website, but it's only available digitally. So we need to have diverse channels to communicate the air quality, along with the health impact, along with the different actions that people can take on the ground. I'm hoping that we are learning some lessons because of pandemic. Our government has done quite well in terms of, sending push notifications through our phone or sending text messages. Hey, COVID cases, today's COVID cases, this or this many people died, wear your mask, wash your hands, and things like that. And the same thing should happen when it comes to air quality. Now that, the pollution is going to be worse. Like, hey, today the air quality is hazardous. Don't go out, or wear your N95 mask or something like that. That needs to happen. And then basically, we just need to know what's going on, how bad it is, who is responsible for what, and what people can do on the ground. A lot of the times when we announce different legislations or policies or regulations, it's just a paper uploaded online, and people don't know what they must do or what that means in their real time. In their real life. So one example is that the government says like, hey, we created these air quality improvement zones. These districts are not allowed to burn any fossil fuel. These districts will be connected to the electricity this year. But the public doesn't know. There's only one press release about it, and we forget about it. So our organization, we mapped it out, we digitized it so everyone can look like what they're supposed to do in their own district. So that kind of communication and data accessibility has to improve. And one last thing is that with OpenAQ, as you know, OpenAQ hosts, worldwide air quality data. And it used to have our government reference grade data, station data, but as of 2019, we no longer have that data on OpenAQ. So we have to send letters to the meteorology agency, and we have to buy the data. So that's an area that we need to improve to make the data open and free and accessible to everyone who wants to use it.
Thanks so much, Azza. Farah?
Yeah, I think just like water, air is a very important element, and it is a basic human right, and that is all. We all are fighting for clean air for the same reasons. And in addition to everything that Azza had said, I won't repeat the things that she said, because we kind of have a similar, we're very close in geography. So there's some things though that I think that need to be put into place. For example, source apportionment and environment emission inventories which are created. They're extremely important studies, but it is unfair to develop plans based on studies which are about a decade ago, which is exactly what's happening right now. So while we do understand the need for these studies need to be conducted in a more real-time manner. These are the findings and for this year, and we need to kick off the implementation. One thing that I noticed while I was exploring the OpenAQ database was that there is sufficient data. I was trying to actually compare between the other our Asian counterparts, and one thing that I noticed was that we do have a significant set of data set to begin with. However, nothing seems to be moving on the grounds of implementation, and that is where we are highly focusing on. And that led me to thinking, that we started this way back before 2015, and we're still struggling. What are the certain reasons for that? So it's not just about questioning whether the government is doing their job, but also whether we are doing ours. For example, a lot of people, often when we do these campaigns where we use public tools like huge lung billboards which turn black over a period of 10 days, people were agitated. They came forward, ma'am, what we can do, how can we resolve this crisis or this issue. The thing is that even though there are certain very simple things that we can do, we may not be willing to do it. Okay, I'll give a very simple example, and that is, if you're standing at a traffic junction, you are in a car which is in an air conditioned car. Are you willing to turn your engine down for a couple of seconds when the signal is waiting to turn green for you to go ahead? So these are all small things, because the amount of emissions that are generated while the cars are paused at a traffic signal is huge in a country like ours. Some of the other reasons that I think is that, like Aza said, that we need to all put in efforts. It is something that requires enormous discipline and effective and timely regulation from each and every stakeholder. So, for example, if the government sets a scrappage policy for vehicles, uh, what needs to be the conversation cannot be, that the vehicles which are say around 15 years old need to be scrapped in city of Mumbai, but they are running on the road somewhere else. If they are scrapped for good. So that is one of the things. Like Aza mentioned, there are certain things which are just put on paper. They are released in, a press statement is made, but then there seem to be, distortion in the way things are communicated, even internally within organizations. So people, the person who's sitting right at the end doesn't know what to do or how to implement that plan, which has been passed at some level. Also, other things like phasing out of coal. So, or when we stress on public infrastructure, how many of us are willing in a country like us, where it's a developing nation. I'm sorry, just give me a minute. Yeah, so it's a developing nation and there's a lot of aspiration. So looking to Western countries, how we need to achieve more and how we can be better. So having a car is an aspiration for an average Indian citizen. He or she would rather travel by car if they had one, if not, and only when they do not have that option, etc. So we want to kind of build those communication strategies around which, where we need to, there needs to be a dramatic shift in the mindsets even of people when it comes to implementation or having these things mobilized. And I think that is one of the major gaps which exist when policies are being developed, that these policies are not being laid down keeping in mind inclusivity, that there are different people who are from different socio and economic backgrounds who are a part of this huge country. And I think that inclusivity is key over here, and that is the thing that I would like to conclude my talk with over here.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate everyone's contributions today. Our time together for this panel has come to a close, but for those who are listening in, definitely encourage you to share your questions in the forum. And we hope to see you for the rest of the conference today and tomorrow, and encourage you to reach out to the panelists as well. Thank you so much to the conference organizers, and thank you so much to all the panelists for joining our plenary session today.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thanks.